Hello there, my sleepy fellows. Tonight, let's settle in for a gentle journey, one woven in quiet candlelight and soft rustling parchment, far away in a warm corner of a castle you already know by heart. Our tale unfolds not in grand battlefields or echoing chambers of prophecy, but in the hushed stillness of Hogwarts library, where old pages whisper secrets and magic hides between the lines. This story isn't about danger. It isn't about racing clocks or sharp turns. It's about a very old spell, one so quiet and polite, it didn't even make a sound when it worked. A spell that turned pages, ever so gently, just when they needed to be turned. A spell that waited patiently for someone who truly listened. Tonight, you'll meet a curious soul with a kind heart, a quiet evening, and a question that only magic could answer. So, take a slow breath and picture the world we're entering. It's evening at Hogwarts. The sky outside is a deep velvet blue, wrapped in soft clouds that drift slowly past the towers. The castle glows from within, its windows lit with flickering candlelight that spills like golden silk onto the cold stone walls. Far away in the great hall, dinner is long over. Laughter has faded into low murmurs, and most students are tucked away in common rooms, draped in thick blankets and house-colored scarves, sipping cocoa and playing quiet games near the fire. But deeper in the castle, beyond the suits of armor that never quite stand still and the portraits that whisper to one another when no one's watching, there's a long, winding corridor with tapestries that flutter gently even though no wind passes through. At the very end of that corridor is the library. Its great wooden doors stand open just enough for candlelight to trickle out, a warm, buttery glow that dances along the flagstone floor. Inside, the air is still and peaceful, scented with ink, dust, and a hint of lavender used to ward off silverfish. Rows upon rows of tall shelves stretch out into the silence, each one filled with worn books that have seen 100 years of fingers, eyes, and spells. And in a far back corner, near a frosted window that hums softly in the wind, sits a desk and a story waiting to begin. But before we start, my dear dreamer, if you find your mind smiling as it wanders with us tonight, you're most welcome to join us again. There are many more sleepy journeys through magical places, and we'd love to have you with us. Just gently tap like, maybe subscribe, and let the next tale find you when you're ready. Now, snuggle in a little deeper, let your breathing soften, and listen closely, because sometimes, in the right kind of quiet, Hogwarts breathes stories into the dark. And tonight is one of those nights. Our story begins with a student, a quiet girl named Hannah Abbott. A Hufflepuff with soft eyes and an even softer voice, Hannah was never one to rush, never one to raise her hand first, and never one to forget where a bookmark had been placed. She had a talent for noticing things others missed, like how the flowers in Professor Sprout's greenhouse leaned toward her when she whispered to them, or how the books in the library seemed to breathe easier when she was around. It was the start of her 5th year, and although she wasn't the most confident in duels or the loudest in group lessons, there was one place where she always felt completely at home: the Hogwarts library. The corners were quiet, the tables wide, and the chairs just the right kind of creaky. Madam Pince didn't even scowl as much when Hannah came through the doors. You see, while others studied only when exams loomed near, Hannah wandered the shelves simply because the books called to her. She'd run her fingers along their spines, listening for the smallest whisper of magic. And sometimes, if the light hit just right, she'd catch the shimmer of a title that wasn't there before. Her favorite spot in the library was a narrow alcove tucked behind a tall stack of magical theory books. It was hardly big enough for 2 chairs, but it held a tiny circular window that looked out over the Black Lake, and the light that filtered through always seemed to land perfectly on the page she was reading. She often came there with her best friend, Ernie Macmillan. Ernie, loud where she was quiet, confident where she was cautious, had a tendency to speak in paragraphs and puff up his chest during debates. But with Hannah, he softened. He never made fun of how long she took to pick a book. He even tried whispering once, though it didn't go very well. They balanced each other in the way only true friends do. Ernie brought her scones from the kitchens, and she brought him peace. And so, on a calm Thursday evening, as clouds drifted lazily outside the high windows, Hannah and Ernie sat in their nook. Hannah had a book open about enchanted ink that changed colors with emotion. Ernie had 3 books stacked beside him and hadn't opened any of them yet. He was in the middle of describing an overdramatic encounter he'd had in potions when Hannah suddenly looked up, her brow gently furrowed. The pages in her book had just turned themselves. No breeze, no spell spoken, just a quiet flutter, like the book knew she was ready for the next page. Ernie didn't notice. He was still reenacting a scolding from Professor Snape, but Hannah tilted her head, slowly, curiously, and in that moment, the story truly began. Because sometimes magic isn't loud. Sometimes it's simply waiting for someone kind enough to hear it. The moment the page turned on its own, Hannah Abbott did not gasp. She did not jump, nor did she reach for her wand. She simply stared at the open book, her fingers still resting lightly near the margin, as if the parchment itself had decided to breathe in and out beneath her touch. The library remained exactly as it had been a heartbeat earlier. Candles flickered softly in their brass holders, casting slow-moving shadows across the shelves. Somewhere far away, a book closed with a dull thump, followed by Madam Pince's distant, disapproving cough. The Black Lake beyond the window was dark and still, reflecting the faint glow of the moon like a sheet of glass. And yet, something had changed. Hannah gently turned back to the previous page, careful not to rush, half expecting the parchment to resist her. It did not. The page lay flat and obedient, its ink calm and unmoving. She waited. Ernie was still talking, now deeply invested in explaining how unfair it was that Gryffindor had received fewer deductions for far louder behavior in potions. Hannah nodded politely, though her attention drifted back to the book. Then, without warning, the page turned again. This time, Hannah felt it. Not as a movement of air, but as a feeling, like the quiet certainty you get when you know it's time to stand up and leave, even if no one has asked you to go. The page did not flutter. It slid, smoothly and patiently, stopping exactly where the next chapter began. Ernie paused mid-sentence. And then he said my stirring technique was adequate, which... Hannah? She was staring now. Hannah? Ernie leaned closer. You look like you've just seen a ghost. She swallowed gently. Ernie, did you see that? See what? The page, she whispered. It turned on its own. Ernie blinked. Are you sure you didn't, nudge it? Hannah slowly lifted both hands away from the book. They hovered in the air between them, steady and still. I didn't touch it. The book rested open, perfectly flat. The ink shimmered faintly, just for a moment, then settled. Ernie leaned back in his chair. Right. That's interesting. Hannah waited, expecting him to laugh. He didn't. Instead, he leaned forward again, lowering his voice. Do it again, he whispered, as if afraid the shelves might overhear. I don't know how, Hannah said honestly. She looked at the page, then at the words written there. The chapter title read, Responsive Enchantments and the Art of Gentle Magic. Hannah felt a small flutter in her chest. She read the first line silently. The page did not move. She read another paragraph, then another. The words were calm, thoughtful, written in a style that felt almost conversational, like the author had never intended to impress, only to explain. As Hannah reached the end of the paragraph, the page turned again. This time, Ernie definitely saw it. He sucked in a sharp breath, clapping a hand over his mouth. Hannah, that absolutely turned itself. Hannah nodded slowly. Her heart was beating faster now, but not with fear, with curiosity, with something warm and careful, like excitement wrapped in cotton wool. She leaned closer to the book, lowering her voice instinctively. It's responding to me. Ernie frowned. Responding how? I think... She paused, choosing her words. I think it's waiting for me to be ready. They both stared at the book. Nothing happened. Hannah smiled, just a little. All right, she whispered. I'm ready. She began to read again, slower this time. Not skimming, not rushing, she let the words sink in, her eyes tracing each sentence as if the book were telling her a secret meant only for her. When she finished the page, it turned. Not quickly, not dramatically, just politely. Ernie exhaled. That's either the most amazing thing I've ever seen, or we're about to get expelled. Hannah let out a quiet laugh. It doesn't feel dangerous. She placed her palm flat on the page. The parchment was warm, comfortingly so. It feels like the book trusts me. As if in response, a faint glow shimmered along the edges of the pages. Not bright, not alarming, just a soft, honey-colored light that pulsed gently, then faded. Ernie glanced around nervously. Maybe we should move? Somewhere quieter? This is quiet, Hannah said. But even as she spoke, she felt it. The sense that the book was aware. Not alive in the way creatures were, but attentive, listening. She turned to the syndicate, beginning of the chapter again, rereading the heading. Responsive enchantments, it explained, were among the oldest and least understood forms of magic. Not spells cast outward, but magic that waited inwardly. Magic that responded to intent rather than incantation, to readiness rather than command. These enchantments, Hannah read softly, were often woven into books, halls, and objects meant to teach. They were designed to move only when the reader was prepared, not simply informed, but receptive. The page turned. Ernie stared. That's unnervingly specific. Hannah continued reading. The spell described was not a charm, one cast with a wand, but a principle, an understanding, the idea that magic could sense patience, calm, and focus, and that some spells were built to cooperate rather than obey. As Hannah absorbed the words, the library around them seemed to grow even quieter. The candles burned steadier, the usual rustling of pages from other students faded, as though the world had gently stepped back to give her space. She reached the end of another page. It turned, then another, and another, each time only when Hannah had finished reading. Ernie leaned closer, his voice barely audible. Hannah, I think this book is reading you. She smiled, a soft, almost shy smile. Maybe it always has. Time passed strangely after that. Minutes stretched and folded. Hannah lost track of how many pages had turned themselves. She only knew that the book never rushed her, never moved unless she was ready. At one point, she paused, her thoughts drifting. The page did not turn. She refocused, returning her attention to the words. The page turned immediately. Oh, she breathed. It knows. Ernie shook his head slowly. I've spent 5 years here and never seen anything like this. Hannah closed the book gently, her hands lingering on the cover. The glow faded completely. The library sounds returned. Soft footsteps, distant murmurs, the scratch of quills. Everything looked normal again. Too normal. Ernie cleared his throat. So, do we tell someone? Hannah thought about Madam Pince, about professors, about rules and explanations and labels. Then she looked down at the book in her hands. No, she said quietly. Not yet. She stood, tucking the book carefully under her arm. I think, she added, it found me for a reason. Ernie nodded slowly. All right, but if it starts talking back. Hannah smiled. Then we'll whisper. Together, they slipped out of the alcove, leaving behind nothing but warm candlelight and a library that, for the first time in a long while, felt quietly pleased with itself. And somewhere among the shelves, a spell rested, patient, listening, ready to turn the next page when the time was right. The next day passed quietly, with the kind of slow rhythm that made every footstep in the Hogwarts corridors feel like part of a deeper enchantment. Outside the tall windows, soft gray clouds gathered over the hills, casting a silvery light into the castle, and inside the library, the air was filled once again with the comforting rustle of turning parchment and the faint ticking of the enchanted clocks mounted above the hearths. Hermione had returned to the library after classes, her mind still wrapped in curiosity about the strange events of yesterday. The book that turned its own page, the way it stopped exactly when she whispered a thought, and the way it hummed ever so slightly, as though the pages themselves breathed with old, quiet magic. She tiptoed back to the same corner table, tucked between two old stone columns, its surface worn smooth from years of diligent students. The same book was still there, its blue and bronze spine upright as if it had never moved. She glanced around to make sure Madame Pince wasn't watching too closely, then carefully pulled the book toward her and opened it. It was a compendium of magical flora, lushly illustrated with hand-painted sketches of rare plants, annotated with both Latin names and the occasional scribbled note in faded ink. Hermione hadn't even checked it out officially, and yet the book had stayed here waiting for her, as if it knew she'd return. Today, something was different. As she flipped to the section on moonlit mosses, the pages again shifted on their own. This time, though, they didn't stop at a page she recognized. Instead, the parchment turned slowly, reverently, settling on a page that had no title at all. The ink was faint at first, the parchment nearly blank. But then it began to change. In soft, glowing script, words began to appear, letter by letter, on the page before her eyes. A swirling sentence emerged from the center, not in the usual Hogwarts typeface, but in something older, curved like vines and shimmering slightly silver in the dim light. Only a seeker of silence may read what the books remember. Hermione's eyes widened. She glanced around once more. The rest of the library remained calm. Ron had wandered off to find something about Quidditch team formations from the 18th century, and Harry was tucked in a far corner near the windows, sketching little spell diagrams on scrap paper, his brow furrowed but relaxed. Hermione whispered softly, "What do you mean, seeker of silence?" The book answered. The words faded away and were replaced with a faint outline of Hogwarts itself, drawn like a map, but not of the corridors as she knew them. No, this was something else. It showed a path, a trail that led from the library to somewhere far deeper beneath the castle, a place she didn't recognize. The glowing path curved gently, winding through secret hallways, passing under the main staircase, through a room she had only heard of in passing, a chamber long forgotten, once used for reading ancient scrolls by candlelight alone. As she traced the glowing ink with her fingertip, the outline shimmered again. This time, something even more curious appeared. Another page, tucked near the back of the book, fluttered out and landed softly on the desk. But it wasn't attached to the book at all. It was loose, made of finer parchment, with rounded corners and a soft gold border. And in the center of this parchment was a rune Hermione recognized immediately. The rune of memory. She sat back slowly, her breath caught between wonder and caution. "Harry," she called out in a gentle voice, not wanting to alarm the stillness of the space. "Come look at this." Harry padded over and tilted his head at the glowing map. "Whoa, that's not normal." "No," Hermione whispered, and it appeared on its own. "Think it's a trap?" he asked, half joking, half serious. Hermione shook her head slowly. "No, it feels old, not dangerous, like it's been here all along, just waiting." The parchment glowed faintly again, and for a moment, the rune on the loose page shimmered in time with the candlelight around them. Ron joined them a few moments later, still holding a thick volume on broomstick maintenance. "What's going on? Why does that page look like it's breathing?" Hermione turned the parchment toward him. It's the rune of memory, and this map, it's showing us a path to somewhere that's not on the current castle blueprints. Ron squinted. So, like a hidden room? Maybe, Hermione murmured. Or maybe it's something else. A library within a library. A memory locked in pages. Harry looked thoughtful, his voice soft. Could it be one of the rooms the founders made? You know, like how the Chamber of Secrets was hidden? Hermione's eyes lit up, not with fear, but with a kind of reverent curiosity. Possibly, except this doesn't feel like Salazar's darkness. It feels more like Rowena Ravenclaw. There was a hush among them. The library's soft air wrapped around their table like a warm shawl, and outside, a faint drizzle tapped against the high windows, as if encouraging them onward gently. Hermione slid the rune of memory into her book bag and carefully closed the glowing volume. Let's not tell anyone else for now. I think this is something we're meant to find slowly. They agreed, not out of secrecy, but out of a quiet understanding that magic, especially magic like this, was best approached with respect and patience. That night, Hermione placed the glowing parchment on her bedside table. It pulsed faintly, not intrusively, but like a heartbeat of knowledge waiting to be rediscovered. As she drifted off to sleep, her mind was filled not with excitement, but with calm wonder. A secret path, a book that responded to her thoughts, and a rune that breathed like memory itself. Whatever lay ahead, it wasn't a race. It was an invitation to listen, to read, to remember, and so, beneath the calm canopy of enchanted ceiling stars in the Gryffindor common room, Hermione smiled softly in her sleep, her hand resting near the book in her bag, ready for whatever gentle discovery tomorrow would bring. The following morning unfolded like a half-remembered dream, gentle and quiet. Light streamed through the tall Hogwarts windows, catching the dust motes in golden beams as students moved through the corridors at their usual pace, unaware of the quiet secret unfolding in the heart of the castle. But for Hermione, Harry, and Ron, the world had tilted just a little, made softer and more mysterious by the discovery in the library. Hermione rose early, her thoughts still tethered to the rune-marked parchment resting inside her book bag. As she tiptoed through the common room, her robes brushing the warm stone floor, she could feel it again. That subtle thrum of magic, quiet but persistent, like a whisper nudging her forward. She met Harry and Ron by the Great Hall steps. Breakfast was underway, but the three had agreed that today they wouldn't wait. Whatever the glowing book had shown them, the path, the secret chamber, the rune of memory, it needed to be followed. Not because it was urgent, but because the castle itself seemed to be asking them to listen. They slipped away before anyone could stop them, moving through the quieter back corridors that only students who had explored every nook and cranny knew. Hermione held the enchanted parchment open in her hands. The glowing map hadn't changed, but as they walked, it responded with soft flickers, pulses of light that shimmered when they turned the right way. The first turn led them behind the Transfiguration wing, through a tapestry of an oddly cheerful mermaid holding a broken wand. Most students assumed it was just decorative, but Hermione pressed her hand to the wall behind it, and the stone shifted with a quiet sigh. They stepped through into a narrow passage lit by floating candles, dim, golden, and flickering as though swayed by breath rather than breeze. The air here was cooler, but not unfriendly. It felt preserved, like something untouched for a very long time. "Where do you think this ends?" Ron whispered, his voice barely above the gentle echo of their steps. Hermione didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the parchment, which now showed their moving position like a twinkling light. "Somewhere forgotten," she said softly, but remembered by the books. As they descended a spiral staircase, the stone beneath them felt smoother, older. The walls changed too, from Hogwarts' usual castle stones to something more ancient and polished, with inlaid script that shimmered when they passed. Harry ran a finger over one line of text carved into the archway. It wasn't in English. "Hermione, what language is this?" She peered at it, lips moving as she read. "It's Old Runic, not the usual textbook kind. This predates even Merlin's time. I think it says, 'Knowledge sleeps until kindness wakes it.'" Ron frowned. "What's kindness got to do with it?" Hermione gave a faint smile. "Maybe everything." At the base of the stairs, the corridor opened into a small antechamber, a round room with walls lined in, dark, glassy stone. In the center was a pedestal, and atop it lay a book. Not glowing, not floating, just sitting there as if waiting to be picked up, but none of them stepped forward right away. The air here held a different weight, not threatening, but filled with something expectant, like a breath being held. Harry finally broke the silence. "Is this the end of the map?" Hermione nodded. "Yes, this is the place." Ron moved a little closer and peered around the room. "Feels like we shouldn't touch anything." Hermione carefully approached the pedestal. The book before her was bound in deep forest green leather, its edges lined in silver. On the cover, a familiar symbol had been stamped, the rune of memory. She reached out, but the moment her fingertips brushed the surface, the room responded. A gentle vibration hummed through the floor. The walls shimmered, and with a soft whoosh, one of them transformed into a moving image, like a memory played through mist. They all stepped back slightly, startled. In the swirling image, they saw a young witch, long ago, sitting at a library desk not unlike Hermione's. Her robes were older in style, her hair braided with tiny feathers. She whispered to a book, just as Hermione had done, and the pages turned in reply. "She looks like—" Hermione trailed off, entranced. Ron tilted his head. "Is that Rowena Ravenclaw?" The figure smiled faintly, as if hearing the name, though her lips didn't move. Instead, she turned to look directly at them, no, through them, and placed her hand on her heart. The rune of memory glowed on her chest like a pendant. Then the image faded. The room fell still again, but a new feeling had taken root, warmth. Hermione finally picked up the book. The moment it left the pedestal, soft candlelight filled the walls, illuminating narrow shelves that had been invisible before. Books, countless books, lined the secret chamber. Some hovered slightly above their shelves. Others pulsed faintly, as if waking from a long sleep. It was not just a room. It was a hidden wing of the library, a place where books waited, not to be read, but to be remembered. Each volume had a small tag, names, dates, even emotions etched gently into the bindings. This one says, Hope, 1323. Hermione ran a finger along the spine. Harry read another, Courage in Quiet Places. Ron, quietly looking through a lower shelf, said, Mine says, Forgiveness that took years. They stood in silence, overwhelmed. These weren't textbooks or spell books. These were memories, preserved, softened, shared. Hermione opened the green book and read the first line. This library within a library holds moments that matter, not to the world, but to someone. A kindness offered, a grief understood, a joy remembered. These are not grand stories, but they are real. Harry whispered, So, this is a library of feelings? Hermione nodded slowly. A memory archive, but not of events, of meaning. And as she spoke, the parchment in her bag began to glow once more. Another message appeared. If you have found this room, then you have already remembered something worth keeping. For a long time, none of them spoke. They simply walked the quiet aisles, each picking up books and gently leafing through moments left behind by long-forgotten witches and wizards. Asked, letter from a mother to her son. A drawing left by a homesick first year. The memory of laughter on a staircase when the world felt too heavy to smile. It wasn't dramatic. It was soft. And it mattered when they finally emerged from the hidden chamber. Hours later, though it felt like minutes, the air in Hogwarts felt a little warmer. The sky outside had darkened, and the castle lights glowed like watchful stars. Ron stretched and said, We're not telling anyone about this, are we? Hermione smiled gently. No, not yet. Harry added, Let's just let it stay quiet, for now. And they agreed, with a nod and with full hearts. As they walked back through the corridors, the rune of memory softly pressed against Hermione's side in her bag, still glowing, still waiting, because some magic doesn't need fanfare. Some magic simply waits for someone who remembers to listen. The next morning arrived gently, as if even the sun understood the need for a slower pace. Light spilled softly into the common room, warming the edges of the armchairs and catching in the dust that floated like lazy fireflies. Hermione sat curled near the window, the rune of memory still glowing faintly inside her satchel. The secret room beneath the library had stayed with them, not in a loud or urgent way, but like the echo of a kind voice, one that settled in the heart and asked to be remembered. Hermione wasn't the only one changed by the experience. Harry and Ron, though quieter than usual, seemed more thoughtful. Even their laughter at breakfast had a calmness to it, as if some part of them was still lingering among the shelves where emotions had been stored like treasure. It was Hermione who suggested they return that afternoon. Not to search for more secrets, she said gently, but to explore what it means. That place, it felt like a space where you choose who you are, not just learn about the world. They all agreed. And so, after classes ended and the castle had settled into its usual evening hush, they made their way once more behind the mermaid tapestry, through the hidden corridors, down the spiraling steps, and into the now familiar library of memory. But this time, they didn't rush toward the books. Instead, they paused in the entrance chamber, letting the room acknowledge their return. A soft breeze drifted across the stone, though there were no windows. The pedestal where the green book had rested now held nothing. It waited, perhaps, for someone else's story. Hermione moved to one shelf, Harry to another. Ron stood in the center, unsure where to begin. Then slowly, like being drawn by quiet instinct, they each chose a section of the room to explore on their own. Hermione found herself in a corner lined with small, delicate volumes. Each had a single word written on its cover: worry, regret, shyness, loneliness. Curious, she opened one labeled worry. Inside, rather than chapters, were vignettes, short passages from students long gone, nervous thoughts before exams, the quiet pressure to make parents proud, the self-doubt before casting a charm. Hermione's heart stirred. He had felt all of these things. The book didn't offer advice or spells. It simply offered company. And in that quiet companionship, Hermione realized something. Magic didn't always mean power. Sometimes it simply meant presence. She closed the book with care and pressed her palm to the cover. It pulsed gently, thanking her perhaps. Across the room, Harry stood before a shelf of thicker tomes. Titles like The Courage Not Seen, Unspoken Farewells, and Loyalty After Loss whispered to him through their worn bindings. He pulled out one with a tattered ribbon attached and flipped through its pages. It told of a boy who had left Hogwarts during a war, sacrificing his last year to protect his village. No glory, no recognition, just quiet strength. Harry read it in full silence, the room around him fading away. He could feel the boy's heartbeat between the lines. Closing the book, he whispered, "Thank you," and the ribbon twitched once as if waving goodbye. Ron, meanwhile, wandered restlessly until he came across a low shelf with mismatched journals. No titles, no organization, just personal notes, drawings, half-written letters, jokes scribbled in margins. He opened one and burst into quiet laughter. A young witch had filled her journal with sketches of magical pranks gone wrong. Ink-splattered walls, self-tangling robes, a cauldron that had turned into a squealing teacup. Each page was filled with a lightness that made Ron smile wider with every turn. It reminded him that memory wasn't just about what hurt. It could also be joy, mischief, moments that made life lighter. He didn't take the journal with him, but he left behind a doodle of his own. A small self-portrait giving 2 thumbs up, grinning wildly. The books, in their quiet way, accepted it. The shelf shimmered. After a time, they gathered again in the center of the room. Each had changed, though no one said so out loud. The room didn't need explanations. It understood. Hermione was the first to speak. "I think this place shows us the parts of ourselves we forget to honor. The soft parts, the scared parts, the parts that want to be heard, not fixed." Ron nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, and it made me laugh. I didn't think a magical library could do that." Harry looked around one last time, then to the others. "Should we come back again?" Hermione smiled softly. Maybe, or maybe it'll let someone else in now. The rune of memory, glowing faintly in her bag, seemed to agree. It pulsed once, and then dimmed. They walked out together, not through the back halls this time, but through the main corridor of the library itself. Madame Pince glanced at them, but said nothing, sensing their calm. The candles along the walls flickered gently, like they knew the students had found something rare. By the time they reached the common room, the evening sky had turned dusky purple. Stars blinked above the towers. The wind carried a cool promise of autumn. That night, Hermione placed the rune of memory on her bedside table. It no longer glowed, but she didn't mind. It had already done what it came to do. In her dreams, she saw a room of shelves, not ancient or mystical this time, but warm and personal. On one shelf sat her memory of reading her first Hogwarts letter. On another, the joy of solving a riddle in her 3rd year. And in a quiet corner, the memory of tonight, when she, Harry, and Ron had chosen not to chase answers, but to simply feel. Some magic changes the world, and some changes how we see ourselves. A few days had passed since their quiet return from the hidden chamber beneath the library, and something gentle but undeniable had shifted in Hermione. Not in a way anyone could point to directly. There was no sudden brilliance in her spells, no dramatic speech in class. But inside her, something had softened, or perhaps awakened. She began noticing things she hadn't before. The way first years huddled nervously before lessons. The quiet pride in Professor Sprout's voice when her plants bloomed. Even Ron's jokes, once background noise during study hours, now made her pause and smile instead of sigh and scold. The world had slowed, just enough to let her see it differently. But there was still one piece of the mystery lingering in her heart, one she hadn't dared explore until now. That evening, she sat alone in the Gryffindor common room, the fire low, the windows fogged with night chill. Everyone else had gone to bed. She took a breath and opened her satchel. The rune of memory lay inside. Faint now, its glow reduced to the barest whisper of silver light. Still, it pulsed gently as she touched it, as if it knew the moment had come. Hermione rose and left the tower quietly. No invisibility cloak this time, no need for stealth. She was following something older than rules, a calling only she could hear. Back in the library, the shadows welcomed her like old friends. The torches along the wall flickered on their own, one by one, casting a soft path toward the back. She found herself again before the tapestry of the mermaid, her song muted tonight, as though even the portrait sensed the quiet reverence of what was to come. The path beneath the library had not changed, but her footsteps had. Slower, more certain. The rune guided her not just to the chamber of books, but to something deeper. A space even further down, a staircase that hadn't been visible before. It revealed itself only as she placed the rune gently against a carved stone near the entrance. A faint click, and the steps unfolded from the floor, like a secret inhaling its first breath in centuries. Hermione hesitated only for a heartbeat, then descended. This chamber was smaller, round, no shelves, no books, just one pedestal in the center and a single object resting atop it, a mirror. Not the mirror of Erised. No. This one was simpler, older. Its frame made of twisting braided silver vines. Its glass shimmered not with reflection, but with movement. Swirls of light and shadow danced across it, like clouds caught in a bottle. Hermione stepped closer. As she stared into the mirror, it didn't show her face. Instead, it showed memories, not hers, not yet, but others, hundreds, maybe thousands, faces she didn't recognize, moments of joy, sorrow, confusion, triumph, brief glimpses, like flickering candlelight in the wind. Then it shifted, and there she was. A younger Hermione, first year, curled in the library's corner, nose deep in a book, lips moving silently as she read. Then another, third year, cheeks red from tears, holding onto a time turner like a lifeline. And another, fifth year, speaking bravely in the face of doubters, standing firm in what she believed. And then, the present, she watched herself holding the rune, entering this room, saw herself as if through the eyes of the library itself. But what caught her breath wasn't the image, it was the presence behind it, a warm, watchful awareness, like being seen by someone who knew every inch of her soul and loved it anyway. The mirror pulsed once, and a voice, not spoken, but felt, echoed in her mind. You remember others, but do you remember yourself? Hermione's breath caught. She didn't answer aloud, but her eyes brimmed with quiet understanding. This library, this entire secret place, it wasn't just about history or magic or the memories of others. It was about honoring all memories, even the ones we keep hidden in ourselves, even the ones we think unimportant, even the ones that hurt. She had always believed in learning, books, facts, spells, history, but this place had taught her something more profound, that emotions, choices, and quiet moments were just as magical. That knowledge meant little if you didn't also understand the heart. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from release, from finally seeing herself whole, the brave parts, the scared parts, the cleverness, the doubt, the strength, the softness. The rune of memory pulsed in her pocket, and for the first time, it began to dissolve. Its silver lines faded into light, drifting toward the mirror, where they merged and disappeared. A gift returned. Hermione stepped back. The mirror's surface calmed, fading into stillness once more. She bowed her head slightly, not out of habit, but gratitude, and turned to leave. As she reached the staircase, a faint shimmer danced across the room. For just a moment, the air glittered like morning frost kissed by sunrise, and in that light, the room whispered one final message, not in words, but in feeling. You are remembered. By the time Hermione reached the Gryffindor Tower, the sky was beginning to pale with the promise of dawn. She climbed into bed with slow, grateful limbs. The rune was gone, but she didn't feel its absence. In her heart, she carried everything now, not just spells, not just facts, but the truth that her memories mattered, that every part of her journey, even the quiet ones, held magic. And somewhere beneath the library, a mirror waited patiently for the next student who needed to remember not the world, but themselves. As the last echoes of the reversed candlelight faded into a hush, the corridor of the castle slowly softened around the students. The walls, once alive with shimmering movement, now settled into stillness. The strange, quiet pull of magic that had carried them this far seemed to fold itself gently away, like the end of a lullaby. Each footstep now sounded more like a whisper than a sound, and the air, still rich with mystery, no longer trembled with tension. It simply rested. Call to action. If this magical evening made you feel a little calmer, a little dreamier, or just a little more at peace, then gently tap the like button, subscribe for more cozy adventures, and drift with us again next time. Your journey into wonder is always welcome here. The students walked side by side, but no one spoke. There was nothing more that needed to be said. The mysteries had not been solved completely, but something had shifted. A trust had formed between them and the strange flow of time within these walls. Not all questions were meant to be answered before sleep. Some were only meant to be asked. They reached the place where it all began, that quiet, warm room with the glowing candle. The table was still set, but the flames were no longer flickering backward. They burned gently now, in the way ordinary candles do, casting soft golden light on the faces of those who had witnessed the impossible. Ron gave a quiet yawn, and Hermione smiled as she wrapped a blanket tighter around her shoulders. Harry looked at the candle one last time, and in his eyes there was a kind of peace that hadn't been there earlier. Whatever the magic was, whatever strange kindness had allowed them to glimpse time in reverse, it had not meant to frighten them. It had meant to show something about moments and memory, perhaps, about how every flame holds a story, even the ones that burn backward. They each said goodnight with soft voices, their steps taking them back to their common rooms like a river flowing gently home. The castle, too, seemed to sigh in relief. The portraits returned to their frames, the staircases stilled, and the whispering tapestries fell silent once more. In the Gryffindor common room, the fire crackled normally in the hearth. Outside the windows, stars blinked against the sky, as if winking goodbye to a night that would never quite be repeated. And as they lay in their beds, the candlelight seemed to follow them, not as a flame, but as a feeling, a warmth that lingered beneath the blankets, a memory of something wondrous and oddly comforting. In the very last scene, the enchanted candle sat alone, now just an ordinary piece of wax and wick. But if one looked very closely, very gently, they might notice that the last drop of melted wax on the table shimmered just a little, like time itself had sighed and settled in, waiting to dream. Sleep came easily that night. The story, though strange, had become part of them, and somewhere, perhaps in another hidden chamber of Hogwarts, another candle waited to glow. But only when the castle was ready, only when someone needed to see time differently. And now, as the candlelight grows dim in the corners of our little story, you find yourself wrapped in the quiet afterglow of a magical evening. The enchantments have faded, the pages have settled, and the library has returned to its gentle slumber, just as it always does, keeping its quiet wonders tucked away like dreams between the lines. You're safe now, nestled under soft covers, listening to the last notes of a tale that carried you through winding corridors, shifting time, and pages that turned all on their own. What you've seen tonight was never loud or wild. It didn't need to be. Magic, you see, isn't always about grand duels or flying brooms. It's often found in the quiet places, in flickering candles, forgotten tomes, or the way a page moves even when no one is looking. If your eyelids feel heavy now, that's all right. That's the library gently whispering that the story can wait until morning. Nothing will vanish. Every magical moment you've experienced tonight, every soft footstep, every warm light, every secret uncovered is still here, resting with you. And should you dream tonight, you might find yourself wandering vacant into that quiet library. Perhaps the book will still be open on the table. Perhaps the candle will glow in reverse once more, just for you. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll find a new story waiting, one that turns its own pages when your eyes grow sleepy. Whatever the night brings, let it bring peace. Let your breath fall soft and even. Let your thoughts float like parchment in the candle's warmth, because here, in this magical stillness, you are held by wonder and gently, completely at ease. Sleep well, dear listener. You've walked through a hidden story tonight, and now it's time to rest. Let the magic settle quietly around you. Let the candlelight glow softly behind your dreams. Tomorrow may bring new adventures, but for now, all is calm, all is warm, the spell is complete, and the library remembers you good night.